Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So before we get into today's video, I just wanted to take a second and give a quick shout out to my lovely patrons, Esther, Sophia, Cassandra, Danny, Marie, and Justin. Thank you guys so much for your support. I could never express how much you guys truly mean to me, and you are the reason that I am able to continue doing YouTube and spread awareness about these cases that just need so much more exposure and mean so much to me. Again, thank you guys so very much for supporting me and for being a part of the Patreon family. So the case that we're going to be discussing today is one that involves an Indigenous transgender woman who went missing. Now, I've talked a lot about the discrimination and disadvantages that Native women face every single day in their lives in my video about Selena Not Afraid. So if you want to hear more about the statistics and things like that, make sure to go ahead and check that video out. I also want to let you guys know that I'm working on a little mini series talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women and kind of why they're in the position that they're in today and why so many Native people are in the position that they're in today. So make sure to go ahead and keep on the lookout for that. So for this video, I'm not going to get too much into the disparities and that information because I am coming out with that other mini series that is a complete focus on that. So for this video, I just want to focus on the case at hand. So make sure to keep a lookout for that within the next few weeks or maybe a month or two. But yeah, either way, with that being said, let's just get right into today's case. Today, we're going to be discussing the unsolved disappearance of Aubrey Dameron. Aubrey Dameron, who went by the nickname Shorty, grew up in a small town of Grove, Oklahoma, which is in the northwest side of Oklahoma, about 45 minutes away from the Missouri state line. Aubrey was a member of the Cherokee Nation as well as the transgender community. She was originally born as Austin before transitioning when she was in high school. She was described as being a gentle soul who just wanted the best for everyone around her. She loved music and dancing and had big dreams of moving to Hollywood and working in the entertainment industry. Now, as you can imagine, being a transgender woman transitioning in high school, which is also a lot of people's most vulnerable times in their lives, while also living in a very small town of less than 7,000 people in Oklahoma, she had a very rough time growing up. Now in middle school, she actually came out to her family as being gay. Her family didn't really know how to take this, and they thought that it was something that they could just pray away. Then eventually she started to wear women's clothes and started to ask others to call her Aubrey instead of Austin, and started asking that others use she pronouns. She eventually sat her family down and told them that she was a girl and that she was going to start seeing a doctor and a psychiatrist to fully transition into physically being a girl, because that's who she is, that's who she's always been. So the whole idea of being transgender was completely new to her community. No one had really seen it before, so when they saw her, they kind of would just stare at her. People would often ask her questions, about being transgender, and even though she didn't have to answer them, she had no obligation to give the information to people. She was the type of person that didn't mind. She just wanted to educate those around her and answered every question that she was asked to the best of her ability. She wasn't offended. She wasn't the type of person who just expected others to understand and know. She was very willing to explain, because again, that is something that her town wasn't used to. It's still something that people don't fully understand. So she was the type of person that she was like, I want you to understand me and understand that, no, this isn't just me wanting to dress up as a woman. This isn't just me having some sort of, issue where I just want to look different. It's, I am a woman. I know I'm a woman. So that's what I am, and that's what I'm going to live my life as. However, what was very difficult for Aubrey was that even though her father didn't overtly, disown her or anything like that, he really didn't know how to handle this very well. So Aubrey's mother and father were divorced, and then after she had come out as gay and then as transgender, her father really started to distance himself from her. So when, her and her brother Tommy would visit him on the weekends, he would make it a point to only take Tommy places and would just kind of leave her at home. So that was really difficult for her, obviously, feeling like her dad no longer wanted her as a child. This put a really big strain on the family because at that point, her mom, Jennifer, would always have to call her father and be like, you have to take Aubrey too. You have to take her when you go out and do things because she is still your child. So he was basically being forced into treating his own child as an equal. And that's something that is not easy to accept, especially when you're young. She also dealt with a lot of bullying in high school. Like I said, this was when she started transitioning and living her life fully as a woman. Her peers would call her names. They would laugh at her. And she was even banned from churches around her community. And this was really hard for her because she was a very spiritual person and all she wanted to do was worship at church, but they didn't like how she dressed. People didn't like that she was a biological male dressing up as a woman, so they wouldn't allow her in the church or allow her to worship. However, despite all of the bullying, bigotry, and hatred that she faced, Aubrey believed that instead of getting revenge or spreading hate against those who bully her, she just thought that everyone should pray for one another. She was still a happy person and content in her life because she knew herself, and she was happy that she finally just got to live her life how she always knew she had to, as a woman. Thankfully, Aubrey did have people in her life who she could count on. She was very close to her uncle, Christian Fencer, and her aunt, Pam. Chris and her were only 6 months apart in age, and they both had struggles with their identities. They grew up together and were with each other pretty much every single day, so they looked up to one another. Aubrey always thought that Chris was outgoing and fun, and she always just wished that she had his personality. But then Chris saw Aubrey as this woman who always stood up for herself and for others and didn't take crap from anybody. She was very forgiving and didn't let things get to her, and she just did her own thing and lived her life unapologetically. Now, late 2017 or early 2018, Aubrey moved to New Mexico with her boyfriend at the time, JC Pearson. However, Chris and Pam soon learned that the two's relationship was not as good as everyone had thought it was, or as, Aubrey would make you believe. They found out that Jay was actually very abusive towards Aubrey and had threatened to kill Aubrey if she ever tried to leave him. She was absolutely terrified of what he would do if she tried to leave him, and honestly, she felt guilty. However, Pam told her that him acting like this is not her fault. She should not feel bad because this just is not how someone acts when they love you. So by 2018, Aubrey was able to gather the courage to actually leave Jay and move back to Oklahoma to be with her family. However, Chris worried about this because her family actually did struggle pretty badly with meth. Her mother, Jennifer, her stepdad, and her brother, Tommy, were all very addicted to this drug. Pam and Chris didn't want her getting involved in that kind of stuff, and they urged her to be careful and to surround herself with people who would uplift her and who would be good influences to her. And she said that she would. However, when Jay was asked about why Aubrey chose to, move out and move home, he told everyone that she herself was actually dealing with addiction herself, and the reason that she went home was to get some help. I will get more into all of this later, but Pam believes that the only reason he said that, she was addicted was because obviously he didn't want people to know the real reason that she chose to leave. But honestly, to this day, we don't know for sure if she was actually using or not. It was by December of 2018 when those close to Aubrey began to notice changes in her behavior. Aubrey was always in constant communication with Chris and Pam and checked in pretty much every single day. Even when she moved to New Mexico, she was either calling or texting every day. When she moved back, she was still calling and texting very regularly. However, they started to notice that this communication started to decrease. It turned into her getting in touch every other day, and then every few days, and then once a week, and then even less than that to a couple times a month, until eventually there was no communication whatsoever. In addition to this, she had used social media very regularly, and the same thing was pretty much happening at the same time that she was losing touch with her family. She was stopping posting as often as she did until eventually she just stopped posting altogether. And again, to this day, no one has any idea why Aubrey just fell off of social media and stopped communicating with everybody. Now, there is some discrepancy as to when Aubrey was actually last seen. So, at the time of her disappearance, she was living with her mother in Grove, Oklahoma. According to Aubrey's mom, at around 3:30 a.m. on March 9th, 2018, Aubrey had gotten up and gotten dressed in a black skirt, black tights, black boots with heels, and a black jacket. Jennifer had said that Aubrey was about to leave when she stopped her and asked her where she was going, to which Aubrey responded that she was going to meet someone. So without pushing any further, Jennifer watched Aubrey walk out of the house. And after this, Aubrey has never been seen or heard from ever again. So a few days after this, Pam had received a message from Aubrey's mom asking Pam if Aubrey was missing, to which Pam said, "I don't know," and she asked why Jennifer thought that. So then Aubrey's mom had sent Pam a screenshot of one of Aubrey's friends who had posted about Aubrey being missing. So then Pam reached out to this friend who said that she heard from a different friend about Aubrey being missing. So she messaged this friend to ask who reported Aubrey missing. This friend said that it was a girl named Ashland who reported her missing, who was Tommy's girlfriend. And Tommy is Aubrey's brother, just to remind you. So then Pam went ahead and called the Grove Police Department to see if anyone had actually reported Aubrey missing, and according to them, no one had. So then she called the sheriff's office to see if they had a missing persons report for Aubrey, and they actually did have a missing persons report. So Pam reached back out to Aubrey's mother, who then explained the last time that she saw Aubrey. She told her that Aubrey was going to meet someone at 3:30 a.m., but she did not know who she was supposed to be meeting. Pam initially asked her mother if this was normal behavior for Aubrey to just go off and meet people, and at first, Jennifer said yes. However, Pam said that Jennifer had changed her statement at a later time, and then said that it was not normal for Aubrey to be leaving at these ungodly hours in the night. Pam kept pressing Jennifer and continuing to ask her different questions to try and figure out exactly what happened, but all Aubrey's mom really said was that Aubrey was acting completely normally that day, that she wasn't in any sort of weird mood that she had noticed, and that she had no idea where she could be or who she was meeting. She had absolutely no information on her daughter's disappearance. So after this, Chris and Pam started to do whatever they could to figure all of this out, since it seemed like her own immediate family wasn't all that concerned. So they called the sheriff's office to get back in touch with the detective who was on the case, and as you can imagine, they did not take her disappearance very seriously at all. The police were very well aware of the family's drug use. They pretty much had just left the family alone in the past to do their drugs, do their thing, because they weren't hurting anyone. They were just doing the drugs and keeping it to themselves. So they just assumed that Aubrey was off doing drugs or something like that, and that she wasn't actually missing. Plus, as you can imagine, there weren't very many detectives in this small town in general. So when Pam or Chris would call and ask them why they weren't doing anything, they literally just said that Aubrey's case was not a priority. So she was persistent. She had called pretty much every single day to talk to someone who was in charge after being ignored by pretty much everyone in the police station. When she finally got to speak to someone who was in charge days after Aubrey was last seen, the police continued to stress that they did not believe she was a missing person, and they refused to do anything. They pretty much just said that because, she does drugs, and they pointed out that she has a lot of men as her friends on Facebook, that she probably wasn't missing and that she was just out doing drugs or doing something with a bunch of these different men. They literally, and I'm not kidding you, they laughed at Pam when she started expressing her concerns. It was absolutely appalling. So Chris and Pam went out to search for Aubrey themselves. They went around the community to ask anyone if they knew where she could be or what she was doing. They also tried to speak to Aubrey's immediate family members, but because of their drug use, they were constantly changing their story and they were very unreliable. They kept asking Jennifer about the day that she was last seen, but every time they asked, the story would change. However, Chris was able to find out that on March 9th at around 3:45 a.m., Aubrey's phone had last pinged right outside of the home, about 100 yards away, and this was the last time that her phone had ever pinged. So this did kind of confirm the timeline that this probably was the last time that Aubrey was seen. So something strange that Chris found was that after Aubrey went missing, he went over to the home to search Aubrey's room to see if he could find any clues. But when he got there, Aubrey's room was completely packed up. At the point that she went missing, Aubrey had been living at home for at least 4 to 5 months, so there was no reason for her room to still be packed up. So Chris asked Jennifer why Aubrey's room was all packed up, and she told him that Aubrey had been searching through her room for a bottle of nail polish, and as she was searching, I guess she was cleaning and also packing up all of her stuff. But this didn't even make any sense because it's not just that she had cleaned her room. All of this stuff was packed up as if she was getting ready to leave. So he pretty much just chose not to say anything more to Jennifer because he didn't want to fight or anything like that. But he said that when he went back a few months later and searched her room again, everything was back to normal. Everything was hung up, put away. So it was completely different than when he had been there previously when everything was packed up. So it was very obvious that Aubrey's mother had gone back in the room and put everything back after being confronted about everything being packed up. So Chris kind of chalked up a lot of this weird behavior to the family's extensive drug use. He basically thought, you know, this drug can make people act in completely bizarre ways, but this entire thing really did not sit right with him and it did not make any sense whatsoever. The next strange thing that happened in this case was when a woman reached out to Jay, Aubrey's ex-boyfriend, and basically told him that Aubrey is being held captive because she owed someone money, and if she doesn't pay soon, that something bad will happen to her. But when Jay turned around and reported this to police, turns out that this woman pretty much just made this entire thing up for money. She told police that she doesn't know anything about what happened. This person does not know Aubrey, so she was charged with extortion, which unfortunately is something that people have to deal with when someone goes missing. This sounds like a familiar pattern if you watch a lot of my videos. This happens all the time and it's absolutely disgusting and despicable, but unfortunately it's just people who are completely unempathetic and don't care about others will just reach out to people and ask them for money and trick them into paying up when really they're just using them for money, and it's gross and it's awful, and I'm glad this person was actually charged. So Chris and Pam continued on with their search. More and more people were willing to help with the searches. They had numerous volunteers who went out several times to help with the searches. But still, even after months had passed without Aubrey reaching out or turning up or any clues, police still were not willing to help, which is just so unbelievable and completely unheard of. I don't know if I've ever heard of another case where even after months of them not coming back, they still did not want to do anything to help. They just kept saying, you know, well, this is her lifestyle. She might not actually be missing and she'll turn up eventually. This is the kind of behavior that she does. They just kept giving excuse after excuse after excuse. They said that they didn't have the resources. They said that they didn't have the information, that another agency had the information and to go contact them. So they were dealing with several different agencies, and each one was just giving them the runaround each different time. It seemed like each different agency had one little bit of information, and then they had to go to another one to get another bit of information, and no one entity had the full spectrum of information in front of them. But Pam and Chris were not going to give up. They still kept searching. They explained that they would sit at the dinner table together every day and just lay everything out in front of them. They looked to see if they had any leads, anything that they had to follow up on, any witnesses that they needed to talk to, searches that they wanted to do, places that they wanted to go. They had conducted all of their own interviews. They hung all of their flyers. They did everything themselves. Law enforcement pretty much did absolutely no interviews themselves, and the few interviews that they did do would be like, hey, do you know where Aubrey is? No? Okay, bye. That's literally it. So the entire investigation was just done by Pam and Chris. So during one of their searches, they actually found a sock that could potentially belong to Aubrey. They called a detective over who picked up the sock and took it into evidence. The weird thing about this, though, was that a witness said that just around the time that Aubrey went missing at that same location, that a man was standing at the property as if he was trying to get in. Now, I think the area that the sock was found in was an area around someone's fenced-in property. Not 100% sure, but the man said that he couldn't tell if this strange guy was trying to break in, but according to the description that he gave of this stranger, Pam was convinced that this description looked just like Tommy, Aubrey's brother. So the one thing that police were able to get a hold of was Aubrey's social media accounts. They have been able to access all of her accounts, but unfortunately, they haven't really found anything. So one of the main problems in this case, as we see with so many other missing and murdered Indigenous women, is that police fail to really do anything because of jurisdiction. They were searching on Native reservations, so there was absolutely no communication. There was no entity that was fully doing its own investigation, and the entities that were investigating were not communicating with one another. They had the turkey marshals, they had the county police, and then they had the city police, and then they had the federal agencies. There was no connection between them, no contact with one another, and there was no one group just fully gathering the evidence that they needed. They were all kind of just doing their own half-assed way of doing the investigation with no continuity between any of them. So because of that, we still have no idea what happened to Aubrey Dameron. So now let's get into the theories on Aubrey's case. So the first theory is that she was catfished by someone who possibly had ill intentions. So when police were looking at Aubrey's phone and social media, they saw that she was using an app called Grindr, which is a dating app. However, the data on this app is actually saved to the phone itself, not the actual account. So they would have needed to get a hold of the actual phone to look through messages so that they could see who she was talking to. So it could be possible that while on this dating app, she met up with someone who she was going to hook up with or go on a date with that night or whatever, but it either turned out to be that same person or a completely different person who just wanted to harm her. Now, first of all, when it comes to these dating apps, you can never be 100% sure who is going to be on the other line, so you always have to be careful with, who you're going to meet up with and where and when. But you also have to consider that this is a very small town in Oklahoma. She was often bullied and harassed by other people from her town. It could be possible that someone knew she was on the app somehow and they wanted to hurt her, so they made a fake account to lure her in and then harmed her. I definitely think that this could be possible. She was known to have been leaving the house at around 3 a.m. and to me, there's really no reason why you'd want to leave the house that early in the morning unless you were going on a date or going to hook up with someone or meeting up with someone for whatever reason. Plus, she was wearing a miniskirt with black tights, with heels, a black jacket, a super cute outfit that you definitely might want to wear when you're going on a date. These things definitely make me think that she possibly could have been meeting up with someone that she thought she was going to spend the night with, but then was actually harmed instead. The next theory is that she just decided to take a break from her life and left on her own accord. Now, like I mentioned before, Aubrey was slowly starting to taper off in communication with her loved ones and wasn't posting on social media as much as she had used to. She seemed to become more withdrawn from those around her. We know that she had a family who just were not very good for her well-being, and she just escaped an abusive relationship. You know, stopping communication with others and stopping, your normal habits can be a sign of depression or other mental illnesses. So some people think that maybe it really was her who packed up her room because she wanted to leave. However, there is a lot that goes against this theory. So first of all, and what I think is the most serious and urgent thing that goes against this theory, is that Aubrey had epilepsy and she was on anti-seizure medication, which she did not take with her when she disappeared. So even if she did plan on leaving, she definitely did not plan on leaving for this long. She needs that medication. In my opinion, there's absolutely no reason why someone would just leave and not take their life-saving medication with them. Plus, she didn't really take anything else with her that would indicate that she wanted to go somewhere and start a new life. Plus, people can say that she packed up her room, but why would she just leave all of the stuff that she packed up in her room? She would have probably taken the things she packed up with her. She probably would have taken some outfits with her. She would have taken enough to at least survive for a little bit. So why didn't she? Plus, I believe, and Pam has stated that she also believes, that Aubrey would have reached out to at least someone by now. She would have reached out to at least Pam to tell her that she's okay. I just don't see her, not reaching out to anyone and telling them anything. I just don't see how she could have just gone missing on her own and then watch her family members put so much time and effort into finding her and just not tell them anything. I feel like she would have at least reached out to them to let her know she's okay, even if she didn't want to tell them, where she was. She would have, in my opinion, said something like, hey, I'm okay, quit looking for me, I'm safe, but I want to be alone right now, and I want you to respect that. And I feel like they probably would have. I personally don't think that this theory is very likely at all, and I don't really think there's much pointing towards it. The other thing that kind of goes along with this theory is the possibility of her taking her own life, which again, could be possible, but she was so very close with at least Christian, but also with Pam, and I just think she would have left a note behind, or she would have told someone something. I just feel like if she was going to take her own life, she knew that she had people who loved her, and I truly believe that she would have told someone, so I also don't think that that theory is very likely either. So the next theory is that Aubrey's mother owed somebody money for drugs, and Aubrey was pretty much collateral because of that. Now, Pam has said that she thinks this is a huge possibility just based on how the family had been acting. Now, as I've been explaining pretty much throughout the entire video, Aubrey's family has been acting really strange. Now, I personally did not think that they harmed her as I was reading that. I know some of you probably thought that maybe they did something to her as I was mentioning how weird they were all acting. However, all I could really think to myself is, why would they harm her? There was no real reason to. I mean, obviously drugs can make you act in a weird way, but if she was harmed by someone that they owed money to and maybe they felt guilty about it, I definitely could see why they were exhibiting such strange behaviors. We know that they were very heavy meth users. We know that Aubrey started to fall off communication with those that she was closest to. So maybe after she had moved home, she was scared of the people that her family was buying drugs from. Or maybe someone started threatening her, so she wanted to hide and stay off of social media and not talk to anyone so no one knew, what she was doing. Or maybe she got into using herself and that's why she stopped communication. There has been a lot of speculation that she was using so much that she didn't talk to anyone, that she was keeping to herself because of that. We also know that her mother allegedly packed up her room. Chris seems to believe that Jennifer was the one who packed up the room and then just made up the story about her looking for the nail polish, but then possibly realized how bad it looked that she had packed up the room and then had just unpacked it and put it back to normal, not thinking that anyone would think anything of it. Another strange thing that Jennifer had done was when a family member had sat down with her and was like, you really need to stop using these drugs and you need to help us find Aubrey. She literally told them to leave. Jennifer did not want anything to do with the conversation and seemed to have absolutely no interest in finding her daughter. Plus, when Jennifer and Tommy would go out on these searches, which did not happen very often, Jennifer and Tommy would just go off and do their own things. On one search, Tommy just kind of veered off and started looking at the different mushrooms in the forest. And when someone asked him what he was doing and if he was helping, he didn't even pretend to care or didn't even pretend like he was searching. He just said that he was looking at the mushrooms. When you are taking such intense drugs such as meth, your behaviors just do not make a lot of sense to others. So I personally think that it's a big possibility that the reason they did not want to search for her or even acknowledge that she was gone is because they already know what happened to her. I think that is a very possible theory, and as far as I have seen, Pam thinks that this is very likely as well. Now, to add to this, just based on their behaviors alone, I almost wonder if Jennifer willingly gave up Aubrey as collateral because she couldn't pay off a debt or something like that. Now, I really do not like speculating such awful things like this, but I feel like if this were something where she owed someone money and then someone came and took Aubrey to send a message, that this would absolutely devastate Jennifer. But she doesn't seem all that concerned. She waited a very long time to report her missing, and to me, she almost seems more guilty than anything else. Or maybe they did not willingly give up Aubrey, but they took her, and maybe Jennifer knows who took her, but is too afraid to do anything. Maybe she's afraid that if she gives up the location of Aubrey's body, that, she'll be harmed by the same people. So because of that, she's just making up weird excuses and not wanting to do anything because she doesn't want to get hurt herself. Or again, maybe she's just not concerned simply because of the meth use. It makes me so sick to even speculate that someone could do something like this to their own child, like give them up. And there's been cases before where a lot of information is pointing towards the parent, especially in cases involving children. And I think maybe sometimes I give too much credit to the parent because it's just something that you don't want to think happens, but it does happen. But I don't know. We don't know if, the weird behaviors are simply because of the meth use and something completely random happened to her. We don't know if their behaviors are because they know what happened or if because they're too afraid to say what they think might have happened. But to me, this seems like the most likely theory when we look at the evidence. I think that there's the most evidence pointing towards this theory out of all of them. The family's weird behaviors and lack of concern, the fact that Jennifer's story keeps changing, the fact that they are very heavy meth users, and again, that kind of drug can make them act in very, very strange ways, and just being involved in that kind of heavy drug can always open up the possibility of other dangerous people being involved in their lives. So to me, this seems like the most likely theory, and I think there's the most evidence pointing towards it. So out of all of these theories, again, like I said, I think her mother, knowing what happened and it's something related to the drug use or a debt or something like that, I think that's the most likely theory. But I also think the theory of maybe her meeting up with someone on Grindr that she should not have met up with, and then they ended up harming her, I think that is very possible. It doesn't explain the weird behaviors, but again, when someone's on that type of drug, nothing can really explain their behaviors. Either way, I am desperately hoping that we get some answers soon. Chris and Pam are working their absolute tails off to figure out exactly what happened to Aubrey. It's what she deserves. Police are not interested in helping whatsoever. Almost everything that we know is solely from Chris and Pam telling us. Her own immediate family hasn't wanted to help in the search, which just, I think honestly, out of everything, that's what hurts me the most. In so many cases that we hear about, even when the police aren't willing to do anything, at least the immediate family members are standing behind them and doing what they can to find them, but Aubrey doesn't even have that. Her own mother and brother are no help at all, and in fact, they seem to be fighting against finding her. Thank God for Chris and Pam, because without them, I probably wouldn't even know about Aubrey's case. It would have just gotten lost and no one would have been investigating it whatsoever. No one would know the name Aubrey Dameron, and that is just horrific to me, and it's just scary, honestly. We need to do more to protect our most vulnerable. As I have stated in other videos, Indigenous women are at exponentially higher risk of being harmed than any other demographic in the United States or Canada. Then on top of that, we have systemic discrimination and prejudices that make it so no one even investigates these cases when they are harmed. So it's not just that they're higher risk. It's not just that they, are more likely to be harmed, but when they do, no one helps. No one does anything about it. It's disgusting. It's unacceptable. And we need to do what we can to help. And I believe by spreading these stories and telling you all about, the lack of concern police have for this missing woman, I think that can help make a difference. I have also listed several resources down below so you can learn more about more things that you can do to help missing and murdered Indigenous women. Aubrey Dameron went missing from Grove, Oklahoma on March 9th, 2019. She is 25 years old. She's 5 feet 10 inches tall with brown hair, brown eyes, weighing around 140 to 150 pounds. She has a triquetra symbol tattoo on her back and another tattoo that says Shorty on her upper left arm. She was last seen wearing a black shirt, a black miniskirt, black pantyhose, and black leather boots with heels. If you have any information regarding the disappearance, please contact the Delaware County Sheriff's Office at 918-253-4531 or the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, whose number will be listed down below. As always, both numbers will be listed in the description box below. So that is all I have for today's video, and now I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that something related to the family's drug use is why Aubrey went missing? Do you think she left on her own accord, or do you think it was a catfish that went wrong? Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked this video, please make sure to leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I put out new true crime and mystery videos every single week. Don't forget to follow my Twitter and Instagram. Both will be linked down below. And if you have absolutely any case suggestions, please make sure to send them over to my email at RachelShannonCases@gmail.com. With that, I hope you guys have a great week, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!